Everyone has seen this image. Even if you know nothing about art, you've probably seen these two hands reaching toward each other. It is one of the most famous images ever created, a symbol of creation, of God, of humanity itself. But what if Michelangelo hid something in this painting that most people never notice? And no, I'm not talking about the fingers, because one hidden detail may completely change the meaning of this entire masterpiece. The creation of Adam was painted between 1508 and 1512 on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, a massive project commissioned by Pope Julius II. More than 500 square meters of frescoes, hundreds of figures. One of the greatest artistic achievements in history, and yet, out of everything Michelangelo painted, this became the most famous. At first glance, the scene seems simple. Adam reclines on the earth. God rushes toward him through the heavens, their fingers almost touch. That tiny gap between them has fascinated people for centuries. Most interpretations focus on that space, the idea that humanity is always just beyond divine reach, or perhaps that God is about to transmit life itself. But here's where things get interesting, because Michelangelo was not just a painter. He was obsessed with anatomy, to an extent that disturbed many people in his own time. He secretly dissected human corpses, studied muscles, bones, organs, the structure of the human body, not as a doctor, but as an artist obsessed with precision. And because of that obsession, some researchers believe he hid something extraordinary in this painting. Look closely at the shape surrounding God, the flowing red cloak, the figures wrapped around him, the strange contours. Now compare that shape to a human brain. Suddenly, something impossible begins to appear. The outline closely resembles the cerebral cortex. One section aligns with the brainstem. Even some internal anatomical proportions appear strangely familiar. Coincidence? Maybe. But Michelangelo knew anatomy better than almost anyone alive, so if this resemblance was intentional, the implications are enormous, because this would mean God is not simply giving Adam life, he is giving him intelligence, consciousness, reason, the ability to think. And if that interpretation is true, then this painting is doing something far more radical than simply illustrating the book of Genesis. It is making a philosophical statement, and to understand why that matters, we need to understand the world Michelangelo lived in, because Renaissance Europe was changing. For centuries, medieval thought placed humanity in a passive role. Man obeyed. God commanded. Salvation was received, not chosen. But Renaissance humanism changed that. Thinkers began asking dangerous questions. What makes human beings unique? What separates us from animals? Is it obedience or is it thought, choice, self-awareness? Michelangelo lived in the middle of that transformation. And some historians believe the creation of Adam reflects exactly that shift. Which brings us back to the fingers. Everyone notices the near contact. But very few notice something else. God's finger is fully extended. Adam's is not. Look closely. Adam's hand is slightly relaxed, almost hesitant, as if he could reach, but chooses not to. That tiny detail changes everything, because if God has already reached as far as possible, then the remaining distance belongs to Adam, meaning the final act requires choice, not passive reception, free will. And suddenly, the entire image becomes much more unsettling, because this is no longer just about creation. It is about responsibility, the burden of choice. The terrifying possibility that human beings are not simply shaped by divine force, but expected to act, to decide, to reach, or not. And then there's another strange detail, the female figure beneath God's arm. Who is she? Some believe she represents Eve, waiting to be created. Others suggest something far stranger, that Michelangelo intentionally embedded layers of symbolic meaning we still debate today. And that's what makes this image so extraordinary, not because it gives us answers, but because it refuses to. 5 centuries later, we are still arguing about what Michelangelo meant, still looking, still interpreting, still projecting our own fears and beliefs into that tiny empty space. And maybe that was the point all along. Because truly, great art does not simply show us something, it makes us question ourselves. So now I want to ask you something. Do you think Michelangelo intentionally hid these meanings? Or are we simply seeing patterns where we want them to exist? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy hidden stories behind famous art, subscribe. Because some masterpieces reveal more the longer you stare at them.